I want to remind you, most of you know, that last year and the year before, twice now, I've been to Haiti on a mission trip. And on that mission trip, the purpose of us being there was to rebuild Haiti, because in 2010, there was a horrible earthquake that struck that country and just destroyed so much. And so even now still, now when most of the world's attention is elsewhere, the people of Haiti are still trying to rebuild, and they've got years and years and years of rebuilding to go. But I went down there to rebuild, and the nature of our rebuilding, what we were doing down there, was we were rebuilding walls. Believe it or not, the nature of what we were doing was to rebuild walls. Walls of homes and walls that had just fallen down and needed to be cleared up. We needed to rebuild those walls. And so I wanted to show you a little bit, some pictures of what that process of rebuilding walls in Haiti looks like. And some of you have seen these before, so it'll be a refresher here. But this is how it starts. Oh, darn, the sun came out and you can't see very well, can you? It starts like you see this guy's literally sitting on what's left of the wall. And the rest of it, it all fall down in the earthquake, and it's all rubble now. And so we need that rubble to build walls. So you see the buckets there, you fill the rubble up bucket by bucket, and you dump it into that dump truck there, and when that dump truck's full, it takes it to the site where we'll be rebuilding walls. And that's what we did. Sandy, show us the next step. So we get enough rubble together, and then we have to actually build the frames for the walls. These cages we built out of this rebar mesh type stuff, and you can't see it close enough, but there's also some chicken wire there. You see us building these frames for the walls. And that had to be done for all the walls of the house. And then, hopefully there's a truck there to help you take them to the site. Otherwise, you're carrying these things the whole way across town. And I did that, and it's not fun. Sandy, show us the next step. You get them to the place where you're rebuilding, actually the walls of a house. And you see we have to set these walls on the foundation. And that's what you see us doing. You see how hard I'm working there in the very left. That's what we all did there. And you get them set, and then Sandy, show us the next step. They're all set up, and you go to the bucket brigade. And this is the part about Haiti you remember. All that rubble has been delivered. You got to put it back in the buckets and pass it down from where the rubble is. You see the rubble pile over to the house. You see it there. And some guy is standing up on the top of those cage frames we had set, and he's sitting up there. He gets the bucket, and he dumps all that rubble down into it. And slowly but surely, you fill those cages up with rubble. Sandy, show us the next picture, please. So hopefully after a while you get this. 4 walls. But you're not done building walls. That's just the first step. Here's the next step. Then, by hand, with a shovel, you mix up this cement concrete mix. You see the lady there in the bottom doing this, and you mix it all by hand. You add some water in there and some sand, and you mix it up, and then you take it to the wall, and you use a trowel, and Sandy, go ahead and show us the next picture. It's up close, and you just slap all that stuff onto the walls until you completely cover it all, and you fill it all. And show us the next step, please, Sandy. Hopefully, when you're done, you put a roof on it and a door, and you get that. And that's the process of building walls in Haiti. Roger, if you can get the lights, please. Thank you for doing that. And that's the process. But building these walls, it takes lots of hard work in the hot sun. It's miserable, it's exhausting, it's filthy and uncomfortable. Who wants to go? Yeah, I always sell it really well, don't I? My first trip, we got done, you're working out in hot sun for 8-9 hours a day. We got done my first day on my first trip, and I was like, Dad, I cannot do this for a week. I'm going to die here in Haiti, right? But we go back to the mission compound, and they've got showers for us. It's cold water, and when you can't take long showers because they don't have a whole lot of water, but there's enough water you get washed off, get all the dirt and dust and grime washed off you, and you feel a little bit better, although as a spoiled American, you're still miserable because you're still in that hot, humid heat, and there's nothing you can do about that, but you're there. So at the end of our first day, we did that, my first trip down there, and I'm like, I only got to do that 4 more times before I can go home to my nice, comfortable bed, right? But unexpectedly, in the evening of that first night, a delivery truck pulls up to the mission compound, and it is filled with timber and large rolls of that rebar mesh that we used to build the cages for those walls. And the guy from the mission compound comes and he corrals us all together and says, all right, we need to unload this truck. And my spoiled American self did not react well to that. Because I'm like, this is just poor planning, right? Because in the United States, why did they just have that truck arrive when we were all dirty and still working and we could have done it then? It's Haiti. You use the truck whenever you can get it. So it was that, and it's like, well, we can go do this work, and it's not dirty work, but we're going to get sweaty and gross anyway, and there are no showers again until the next afternoon. So I'm just like, I'm not dealing well with this. I'm kind of bitter and I'm angry that we're having to do this. But here's the truth when you're building or rebuilding, not just in Haiti, but anywhere. Sometimes building means you do work you don't want to do. Sometimes rebuilding means you do work when you don't want to be doing it. You don't want to do it, but to get the job done, you do it. Guess what? We unloaded that truck. It's all part of rebuilding Haiti. All part of rebuilding those walls. You know what? The people of Israel, at the end of the Old Testament, they were in a similar situation about building walls. When they came back from exile, decades after they'd been taken into exile, they come back to their homeland, Jerusalem, and now they're going to rebuild, right? Except for the whole city is a ruins. It had been attacked decades earlier by the Babylonians and had just been destroyed. So they come back and they got to rebuild everything. So they come back and they get to work rebuilding, and the first big thing they really start to build is the temple. We talked a little bit about that last week, how they started rebuilding the temple, and there's a process to that, and we'll talk a little bit more about it next week. But in the meantime, everything else needs to be rebuilt. I mean everything. Remember, the whole place was destroyed. Primary among all the other things that needs to be rebuilt is the wall around the city. Because what good is it to rebuild the streets, the water systems, the houses, all the other buildings, if raiding marauders from the surrounding areas can just come into the city and sack the place at will? And that's what was happening for a time. Without a wall to protect the city, the people were helpless. And all their efforts to rebuild are completely undone by even the smallest band of raiders. So they're back, they're trying to rebuild, and this goes on. And everything just keeps getting torn down. Now enter Nehemiah, a Jew himself of the people of Israel, but he's not in Jerusalem. He's still way over in the capital city of the empire in Susa. He's the cupbearer to the king of the empire, which means, for our purposes here, he's kind of part of the king's inner circle. And news gets back to him about the difficulty these people in Jerusalem are having and how it's not going well at all. And he's just heartbroken. And he pours out his heart to God. And then he goes to the king and he says, "King, I love you. I know I'm here to serve you. Please let me go back and help lead the rebuilding process for my people." And the king agrees. The king sends Nehemiah back with letters of authority from the king. Nehemiah arrives back in Jerusalem, and he's got the authority of the king with him. The king has sent him. And so he gets there. He talks to his other Jewish friends and colleagues there, and he kind of makes an assessment of the city. Then he gathers them. He gathers the people and their leaders, and he says this: for rebuilding it all to go forward, we have to rebuild the wall. We have to rebuild the wall. Without a wall, we are disgraced in our efforts to rebuild. Without a wall, we and all our efforts are unprotected. So amidst this whole idea among the Jewish people that, hey, things have to get rebuilt here, Nehemiah hones this vision to this one great work. Rebuild the wall. Rebuild the wall. Rebuild the wall. It's an impossible task. I mean, given the manpower, the resources that these people have, remember, these are just exiles returning. They don't got a whole lot of resources. How do you rebuild that wall? How do you do it without people attacking you and tearing it down before you get it built? It's impossible. But he calls the people to rebuild. Nehemiah knows what Jesus later himself will say, that with God, nothing is impossible. So he says, let's rebuild the wall. What would your response be? I mean, what's the response you expect from people? That's impossible. We already tried that. That won't work. I'll sit back and see what happens with the people stupid enough to follow you on this, Nehemiah. And when it falls all apart, then I'll say, I told you so. That's kind of the response we expect from people. But no. This is the response Nehemiah records he gets from the people. It says, they replied, let us start rebuilding. So they began this good work. That's amazing, right? There's no argument, there's no stalling, there's just faith and determination right there. So they start rebuilding the wall. And that's where we get Nehemiah chapter 3. If you've ever read Nehemiah chapter 3, you know it's a detailed list of everyone who is helping to rebuild this wall, section by section. It's not as though the people say, okay, Nehemiah, we won't get in your way. Go ahead. No, that's not what they do. It's not Nehemiah's job to rebuild the wall. Everyone is participating in rebuilding this wall, their own section. Everyone says, hey, this is my section of work. This is my role. This is what I do. And they take it, and everyone there is doing it together. So Nehemiah chapter 3, if you've read it, you know, it's not a very exciting thing to read. It's just a list. And this person built this wall from here to here to here and there. And then this person built their section wall from here. And, you know, that's what it is for a whole chapter. But it details section by section who helps to rebuild their own part of the wall, who is doing their own part. And the overall impression of it is just awe-inspiring. When you picture it in your head, all these people working together to build the wall. People of all ages, backgrounds, classes, they go to work. Even people who in those days wouldn't have been expected to do that type of work are there doing it. There's a man named Shallum. And Nehemiah records, he said, I'll take a section of the wall and rebuild it, but he's got a problem. He doesn't have any sons to help him. And these are in the days where, hey, you don't just go hire a contractor, and probably most of the people here wouldn't have money to hire a contractor even if you could. It's like, how's he going to build this wall? Nehemiah tells us how he does it. He does it with his daughters. Now, in those days, the daughters wouldn't be doing this work. But they see this exciting thing that God is doing, and they want to be part of it, and they say, we're going to do it. So everyone is excited, and they join the effort to rebuild. Even doing things they wouldn't normally do or normally want to do, they're there doing it. And it's not this half-hearted effort to rebuild. You know, it's not, well, I guess everyone else is doing it, so I'll do a little bit here. I don't want people thinking bad of me or thinking I'm against everything. So no. Nehemiah, he describes the people's mentality and their attitude when they come to rebuild this wall, and he uses words like zealous. He says they built the wall zealously. Wow. Let's stop and take a moment to think about this. Look at this. Look at it in light of our culture today. What would our churches look like if all the people in them had this mentality and attitude? What would the church in the United States of America look like if our congregations were filled with people willing to do the work of the gospel with such faith and with such gusto? What would happen if believers today threw themselves into things like this to accomplishing the mission of God in this world? I'll tell you what would happen. This nation would be transformed. Instead of focusing on negatives and possible setbacks, money, resources, manpower, just an all-in push to live up to the vision and to accomplish the mission given by God. The whole place would be transformed. People would be added to congregations daily. The gospel power would be unleashed in our neighborhoods, and don't we just desire to see that happening? The healing power of God just being unleashed in our neighborhoods. People in the church, the church people, that's us. They would be drawn closer to one another in faithfulness. And people outside the church, they would see their lives changed by the power of God. It'd be huge. Great things would be accomplished. That's what happened in the days of Nehemiah. Even in the face of great opposition. Don't get it in your heads thinking, well, they got together and did this and they just did it and it was no problem. No, there were problems. In fact, the surrounding peoples around did not want the Jewish people to be successful. So they did everything in their power to stop the Jews from building the wall, to discourage them. At one point, one of the leaders of the surrounding peoples who opposed the Jews sent this message to Nehemiah. If you want to show us, Sandy. This is the message Nehemiah received. It is reported among the nations, and Geshem says it's true, that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and therefore you are building the wall. Now this report will get back to the king, Nehemiah 6 and 7. What are the enemies doing? Translation, there are all sorts of rumors and stories and gossip going around just about who you really are and what you're really like and what you're doing, and we don't like it, and so we're going to tell everyone, and we're even going to tell the king on you. That's what's happening here. Their enemies, they're using gossip. And they're telling lies to try to discourage the Jews, to take their attention away from rebuilding. Because isn't that what we do when we're facing gossip and rumors? We get distracted, right? We get distracted from what we're doing so we can answer the rumors. Here, they want to distract people from what God wants them to be doing. Because that's what we do. Instead of doing what God wants us to do, what do? We worry. We're afraid. We respond to baseless accusations over and over and over again. Anyone here ever done this? Yeah. But what's great is that's not what happens to people. The people just keep going, and this is what Nehemiah's response is. I sent him this reply: nothing like what you are saying is happening. You're just making it up out of your head. Nehemiah and all the people could have been distracted from the work. What if the wrong people hear this? Oh, what if people believe it? Oh, what are people going to say about us? Oh, no, there's none of that. Nehemiah sends this brief reply. Hey, it's not true. And you're making it up, you big fat liar. It's pretty much what he's saying. Take note here. The perfect way to handle when people are gossiping or slandering you, make a simple response and then move on. This is what the people did here. They keep doing the work to rebuild. There is this faith that the protective hand of God is upon them, no matter what everybody else does or says. So they all keep doing the work God has called them to. They all keep doing the work to rebuild. And you think, great, wonderful, except for no. Enemies, they're not so easily deterred ever, are they? They'll come back and get you, right? Well, that's what they try to do here. They are so desperate to stop the Jews that they actually stoop to threats of violence. This, Sandy, show us what Nehemiah records. He says, also our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them and will kill them and put an end to the work. The enemy's making threats, right? These are scary threats. This is back in the day when people said this, they actually did it. So it's pretty much, hey, if you keep trying to rebuild, we're going to come kill you. You don't have any wall to protect you. So we're going to be on top of you before you. You're not even going to see us coming. And we will destroy you. Step back for a moment. And let me ask you what you would do in this situation. You just want to rebuild a wall. Would you be so gung-ho about rebuilding that wall if there was someone threatening to strike you down just for doing it? Like, okay, I'm building my wall. I just turn my back this way to grab a new block right now, and they sneak up behind you and they just cut you down. You excited about it? Let's put this into a more contemporary context. Who here would still be willing to worship here or do ministry in the name of this congregation for Jesus Christ if someone were waiting to possibly shoot you down when you do it? See, even that's kind of foreign to us. So people in the world actually have to encounter that, but we don't encounter that most of the time here, most of the time. So more simply, would you still worship here if someone would laugh you or make fun of you? Or say to you, oh, you're just stupid for doing that? Or unfriend you or disown you? You see, we lose interest in the work God calls us to for very simple things. This is a very real threat against these people in Nehemiah's day. But we often get discouraged from God's work by a lot less. These people's lives are in danger. But what do? They continue to do the work of rebuilding. They keep it up. Sandy, show us how Nehemiah records it. So this is their solution. Those who carried materials did their work with one hand and held a weapon in the other. And each of the builders wore his sword at his side as he worked. Hey, they're going to build that wall. But they only do it with one hand. And this hand has a sword ready. Wow. So you see them continuing to do the work that they set out to do. This is what we're going to do. This is who we wanted to be. We want to be wall builders. But they also take on now the work of soldiers, right? They're going to be soldiers. They could have walked away from the whole thing. This is getting too dangerous, too costly for me. Or, hey, I'm a wall builder. No one said anything about this being a soldier stuff. That's not my job. That's for somebody else to do. That's not what I signed on for. That's not how I see myself. That's not what I want to do. I'm out of here. No, that's not what happens. They keep doing the work to rebuild. They do the work they set out to do. They continue being wall builders, but then they also are soldiers. Work they didn't necessarily think they would have to do. But hey, it's there, and so they do it. Not only are they soldiers at their own sites, But hey, they set up this system like someone working down the wall. If they call out for help, they're under attack, you drop what you're doing, you get your sword, and you go, and you fight as a soldier there. It's not this mentality of, hey, I'm doing my own thing. These other people can handle their own part. I'm not so concerned about it. That's not mine. No. Being soldiers, not what they signed on for. But to accomplish what God calls them to, it needs to get done. So they do it. Excuse me. And they do it with no complaints. Nehemiah records no complaints here. That's amazing. Rebuilding our ministry here is going to require everyone to do the work of rebuilding. Everyone. It wasn't just Nehemiah and officials here who were doing it. Not just the spiritual leaders, but everyone. And it's going to require hard work by everyone. Just like the hard work of rebuilding Jerusalem. Just like the hard work of rebuilding Haiti. Let me tell you, if I were on those mission trips in Haiti, and we had a day we went out to the work sites, and there might be 15 of us on that mission trip, and 12 of them said, we're just going to sit back and relax today. The 2 or 3 of you who are there, you go ahead and do the work. I guarantee those walls would not get built. It takes everyone doing the hard work. And it's going to require everyone doing hard work they don't necessarily want to do. Just like the people in Jerusalem didn't necessarily want to be fighting with swords. But they got it out of their head, this idea of, this is what I'm going to do, and this is who I'm going to be. No, and they did whatever needed to be done. No preconceived notions about it being somebody else's job. And no objections based on what you want to do. Hey, it needs to get done. We got to do it. It's going to require an enthusiastic, zealous attitude from everyone. And it's going to require faith in God that challenges your deepest fears and your greatest doubts. Because when a group of people get together like that, and they get together to rebuild, and they have that attitude, they have that mentality, that's when great things happen. This is how the Israelites came together to build their wall. And this is the result Nehemiah records. So the wall was completed on the 25th of Elul in 52 days. The impossible task accomplished. And in 52 days at that. And in doing so, the Jews, they overcome their enemies who they were afraid of. Their enemies they thought, well, we can't get the upper hand. But all their enemies around them, they're silenced. Because the wall was rebuilt. All because of faith and determination to do the hard work of God. I say, can we do that? Can the church in the United States of America rebuild like this? Can we rebuild the Church of Jesus Christ in the United States with this attitude to come together and accomplish the impossible tasks? As we look to rebuild here at East Brady Baptist Church, can we do that? Because we can say no. There are a lot of missteps we can take instead. There are a lot of excuses we can make for not doing the work. There are a lot of objections and setbacks we could dwell on rather than doing the work. There are a lot of other things as individuals or as a community of people. There are a lot of things we might want to be distracted by instead of doing the work. We can take the missteps, or we can come together, all of us in love. And we can say, just like the people of Israel said, let us start rebuilding. Let's begin doing this good work. And like that wall in Jerusalem, this ministry can be rebuilt into something strong and life-enriching for all of us here and for people out there. The impossible task can become the greatest victory. So I say, let's start rebuilding. Let's pray.